everyone, and welcome to another interview here at Human. Today, we'll be interviewing Victoria Fragoso, a multifaceted woman who is a singer-songwriter and uses her creativity to using her creativity to advocate for mental health, awareness, while also simultaneously being a loving mother and loving wife. Tonight, we will be interviewing her and finding out her story here on Human. Without further ado, let us bring her on.
Hi.
Okay, how you
Good. How are you?
doing? I'm good, not too bad.
Good.
It's
Woo.
nice to see you. Are you you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. It's Washington. I live in Washington, and it is like rain season right now. It's a monsoon outside, and
Wow.
it's not my favorite. Yeah. But it's important that you drive safely because it just like I can't tell you how many times I've hydroplaned. To be honest. Yeah.
A
So
monsoon, you say?
yes.
Wow.
Probably not. Like people who actually experience monsoons are like, yeah, that's not what's happening. But yeah, yeah.
But it's a nice description. Huh? Pretty
Hmm.
close.
Yeah.
Taking involuntary showers.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, my hair loves it.
I can see. Oh,
Yeah.
how are you doing today? I just want to ask that before we get this started.
Yeah, I'm doing good. I think midweek is always a big time of reflection for me. I actually have this weird thing about Wednesdays that I'm trying to like let go of, but typically I
Hmm.
find Wednesdays to be the most challenging for me. And a number of odd but not so good things have happened to me on Wednesdays. I think I just notice that it happens to
Mm,
be Wednesday, like parking tickets, things like that.
mm.
I see my uncle in the chat. Hi Theo. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Well, for me, Wednesdays are the days that I do the interviews, so it's usually pretty hectic. Plus, I work at night and I sleep predominantly during the day.
That's right.
So I have to be up by a certain time frame. I lose sleep in the process at times,
Yeah.
but here we are. I promised that I would get back on it with the interviews, and I wanted to make sure that I did so and kept my promise to you today, right?
You're doing it. We're
So
doing it.
we are doing it, right? At the end of the
Yeah.
day, we are human, guys, and not a machine.
Yep.
So we too need our rest as creatives,
Hmm.
and just as human beings altogether. But what I'll go ahead and start off by asking you, for those who
Hmm.
don't know, is where are you originally from?
I am originally from Tacoma, Washington. I'm a second generation Mexican American, and
Hmm.
I've lived here for most of my life. I did live in Orange, California for a number of years for college. And, but yeah, I'm mostly a Tacoma Pacific Northwest person. As much as I hate the rain, obviously, for the first 18 years of my life, I didn't really have much of a choice. And then I chose sunshine. And then I chose to be back with family, I think. I do really like the Pacific Northwest attitude. I think the community here can be really strong. I think when you find the people that you connect with. And it's so beautiful in the summer. I think summertime here in Washington is my favorite just because everything is so beautiful. Like everything's so grown, green, like flowers everywhere. So, yeah.
Hmm. What does it mean to be second generation? I always wanted to kind of inquire about that. So yeah.
So it's from my understanding, I say it because it's just like a technical way. My dad was born in Mexico, but he came to the US, and so he's not born here. So technically, that would make him first generation, and then I'd be second generation. Or no, that would make him that I would be first generation in that scenario. But
Mm,
because my mom was technically born in the US, that makes me second generation because she would be first generation. My grandmother actually
mm,
came over to San Francisco just a month before my mom was born. So if it had been a month later that she had come, my mom would have already been born. So um, that difference of a month makes me a second generation Mexican American.
mm.
Technically. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What is one thing you cherished about being raised in the age that we were brought up in, right? I know
Ooh,
so many things have changed, right?
yeah.
Obviously we have social media, just a whole different way of communication that I at times don't necessarily see eye to eye with, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what do you cherish about back in the day compared to what it is now?
I was really a computer nerd when I was a little kid. So even in the second grade, I was interested in like going online and being on the computer. And I think honestly, I did cherish those early days of electronics when it was like cool, but also
Mhm.
much simpler and easier to understand. Um, I was learning like HTML and how to build websites, and that was just really fun for me. And I really liked that kind of like beginning of those things.
Mm.
Um, I also really cherish, I mean, just me personally, summers in Washington, living here and getting to see my grandparents throughout the
Mm.
summers and being over in the north end of Tacoma, which just has a lot of really beautiful homes and like architecture, a lot of older uh, houses as well. And I don't know, I just really love looking at old houses and imagining like people who live there and things like that. I just have always had a really big imagination. So I would say those two things are like I loved having time to daydream, if that makes sense. You know?
It does.
Yeah.
Do you not have that time anymore, huh? We're
Well,
grown now.
I mean, it feels selfish sometimes, right? Because it's like you have shit to be doing. So that's partially where I feel guilty, daydreaming now. But I think, having a good imagination is important, and daydreaming sometimes is really good. I remember
Mm.
talking to one of my bosses and they were taking like a little break and I was just like, they're like, I know this seems unproductive. And I was like, sometimes taking a break and resting is like one of the things that's going to actually make you do better
Mm.
things because you're
Mm.
giving yourself space and time to process and you're allowing like for new things to come in instead of just kind of trying to bulldoze your way through time.
Right. I want to also bring up something else that was in the back of my mind while we were speaking about this, is like feeling guilty, right? Like feeling guilty
Mm,
for daydreaming, which in turn sometimes people feel guilty for taking a break, right? So when I
mm-hmm.
look at things, as I climb that ladder, I'm wondering like, do people feel guilty to live? And then what does living look like in a society that tells you to work all the time, right?
Mm,
So what would
yeah.
be your opinion about that, you know?
Well, I mean, I always like, I'm talking from my own experience in terms of I do sometimes feel guilty for living if I'm like not doing enough or what I'm choosing to do with my time. Um, I think in a society that really cherishes work effort and just being like constantly grinding that hustle culture. And I also think too, it just depends on what you pay attention to. But a lot of the signs that I received when I was growing up is that it's important to stay working and busy and productive. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, I think there's definitely values in those things, but I think everybody has a different like way to be productive. So
Mm.
I what looks like productivity to one person might actually be like a really useless waste of their time and just busy work. Um, and then other times when people seem like they're, not doing anything, there's something happening like that is technically productive. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think it just depends on your perspective.
Mm.
But feeling guilty for living, yeah, I think it's just like taking up space and like, are you contributing as much as you are taking away? Like that's something that's all I've always thought about. Um,
Mm.
not an even exchange of goods necessarily, just like is the energy that I'm putting out like worthy of all the blessings that I'm receiving? Because I feel very blessed, and so it's hard to I think sometimes I've complained before, right? Too. I think everybody's been in a situation maybe where they've complained about something and someone's been like, well, you shouldn't be complaining about that. You
Mm.
have like a roof over your head or something like that. And so that is something I think I really internalized is like, yep, there's a lot to be grateful for. So
Same
just
here.
keep going. Yeah.
Same here.
And
Actually,
this
that's one of
way.
the reasons why I returned to doing the interviews, actually. Because I was sitting back and I was thinking to myself, like, not to toot my own horn, but I have a beautiful platform, you
Yeah.
know, something where people could come on and speak, their truth, their perspective, and that's very rare.
It
What
is.
I own and the responsibility of this, it's important, right? And so just putting almost myself aside about what I want and what I want to maybe not tough through, but just pushing forward with the mission of feeling like I have to. Because if I don't
Mm.
do it, who else is going to do it, you know? So,
Yeah, you feel called to like put this into the world so that there is more of this, and you don't even know like what you can inspire based off of like, creating that change that you wish to see in the world. So all the little things that you're doing, all the big things that you do, it
well,
does make a difference.
to be honest with you, you're part of that, right? Like, I can't exist without you, right? The people who come on
Hmm.
to share their story and open and be vulnerable.
Yeah, of
So, so moving forward, I got some more questions, of course.
course.
Um, I see that you value family, for one. Um, what is one of the most important values that your family instilled in you when you were young?
Definitely hard work. For sure.
It's funny
Like,
we were just talking about that.
just
Yeah.
for sure, like that is literally one of the best things I think, that I've learned from my family, and hard work in terms of like having determination to do the work, having
Mm,
determination to do things that you believe in, and prioritize and value, like family time. Making that like prominent in anybody's life. That's a job. That's something that we have to choose to prioritize, especially in today's world, I think.
mm,
Um, and so, yeah, just the determination to do the things that you really want to do or desire to do or think it will make a difference. And I
mm,
think from that too is like making sure to be humble about it, and to, give other people credit and celebrate other people for what they're, well, and maybe I didn't learn that from my family in terms of like that's what we did, but I think in terms of what, when you think about your experiences with your family, I think, well, for me, being a parent has really made me, I reflect on the experiences that I had
mhm,
and what kind of experiences I want to instill in my daughter or give to my daughter, have be a part of her life. Um, Sometimes we reflect on things that we didn't have and wish we had more of.
mhm,
Um, and for me, like we have, uh, I think that I have such a beautiful family, and I didn't really hear a lot of people express, um, like, hey, I see you doing this or that. Like, that's really awesome. Like, you're so great. Like, I have Tara, a wonderful singer songwriter in the chat. She says, Toya, you make a difference. Like, it's,
mm,
she doesn't have to say that. And it's, thank you, Tara. And it's so nice for her to say that, and I think that is something where, we need to do better about recognizing other people's efforts.
mm,
And specifically, I think that was something that I learned from my family in terms of we didn't do that as much, even though we had really great people. We have really great people doing really great things in their lives.
mm,
And so, the more connected I think you are with your family, it's easier to celebrate those things and to cheer people on. But in today's age, it's like it can be, I mean, we live in separate places, so I think distance is hard.
mm,
And then just, but you have to, you still, even if you're on Facebook every day and you see those little notifications about so and so's birthday, you still have to make an effort to post something or to say something. Like, you could just go to their page and like something, but like you still, if you have to make the effort. And so, making the effort is something that I've always really, uh, just wanted to do for the people in my life. Um, and I haven't
mm,
always been consistent, right? Like, I think those goes in like, the more that your cup is full, the more you have to give away. But, the more depleted your cup is, you just don't have that energy to share. And so, um, balance of that too is something I definitely learned from my family. I have a lot of, I come from a
mm,
lot of very strong female, moms and aunts, and I think I noticed that feminine, quality, and maybe it's not feminine, but the typically I've seen it in my female relatives, is that, just constant work ethic and kind of like, I think sacrifice is really great, but if you don't have your cup full and you don't have anything to give, you're not doing anybody a favor like by trying to continue to give. So,
Mm.
yeah. So those three things I would say is what I really, really took away from my experiences with my family.
So I know that you consider family to be important, but let me ask why, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that that's like a very important question, especially for those who don't have family to necessarily fall back on, you know?
Yeah.
So,
So I also think that family can be made from anybody in your life. I think family comes
mm,
from like really true, deep connections where you just have a level of understanding with someone about something that's deep or meaningful to you. Um, but I can't like disclude that I've had people who are related to me who also are really good family for me,
mm,
and strong family for me. And so I'm lucky enough to have a big family. My mom is the youngest or the oldest of eight, and my dad is the youngest of eight. And so having
mm,
so many aunts and uncles and cousins, and some of us are, closer than others, but I think just having um, their presence in my life is shown me how important family is because even if you don't talk, I went to see my grandparents almost every single day, and if I didn't see them every single day, we wouldn't have had that connection that we did. But
mm,
I got to spend more time with them than a lot of my other cousins did, and so just cherishing that and valuing the time, and the effort that it takes to have relationships in your life. I think that's why I think family is so important because I don't know, I just never back down from a challenge, but relationships can be challenging, but I think they're just like at the end of the day, like having relationships is so much more beneficial to you. It's good to have like what you're doing is also asking other people in other cultures about their perspectives. And so and even in a family, we can all have very different experiences, even
mm,
having gone through the same events and still have different mindsets and goals and things that we value. And so it's interesting to me that like you can still have this variety of individuals in a family that maybe all grew up together and spent all this time together. We're not going to be carbon copies of each other, and we still learn from each other and grow in
mm.
different ways. And so yeah, that's why I think family is so important. It's a little microcosm that it's just a beautiful thing that you want to keep growing like a rose.
It is. I like the way that was very important in the beginning, what you said, that family is not always like blood related, right? It's who you
Yeah.
decide to make your family. I think a lot of us, especially people that I know that I was growing up with and I was homeless with in the streets, we became each other's family, right? Because we didn't really have a family to turn to at that time. So I think it's important that people also understand that that family could be anybody who shares love
Yeah.
for you, love and respect, you know? So, but
Absolutely.
continue. What is something about the Hispanic culture that somebody may not know at all, right? And that's okay. Let's see.
That may not no. So I would just say that every Hispanic family is different. It can be so varied. I think it just depends on that family. Like any other family in America, it's like what happens in the household can be so different. Not everybody is eating the same foods. There's a lot of the times different combinations of things. I am married to someone whose background is also Hispanic, but he had a very different upbringing than I did. Um, and so it's interesting to see that. To me, I find that there's definitely obvious the value for family and for there's a big strong presence of Catholicism in the Hispanic community that I grew up in,
Mm,
um, and I think surprising. It's surprising to me. Well, this is not necessarily like about the culture itself, but it's surprising to me how how unfortunately true it seems to be that when people are unable to speak English, that because they're only speaking in Spanish, or having trouble speaking in English, or speaking in broken English, that just, you can tell that there's this automatic deferral of intelligence that happens. And I think that might be with talking to anybody who doesn't maybe understand English. I think that just tends to, I feel like the treatment of that happens a little too quickly, in my opinion, from the interactions that I've seen in my community. And I think it comes from like a fear of not being able to understand somebody, or also the fear of offending somebody. I think miscommunication can obviously happen when we're speaking, together in the same language, and even more so when you're trying to translate between another language. Yeah, see, Tara, yes, that is so true. My Filipino mom is treated like that, and it's sad. It is sad. I don't quite understand it. I I kind of understand it, but I don't think it I wish people would try a little harder to learn other languages, or just have that mindset that it's just, we're all of the same intelligence. It's just we also have different mindsets. We're processing things differently. Because when something that my grandpa really said to me that struck me was that when you're trying to speak in a different language, you should really be trying to think in that language as well. And it took me a really long time to understand this. I was like, of course, well, duh, like, you want to think, but it's not about translating in your head. It's about actually thinking those words in Spanish. So you don't want to be thinking, like, I have a dream. You want to be thinking, yo tengo un sonido, or something. You want to be hearing your thoughts in that language and then speaking. So you really want to like fully immerse yourself in the language when you're speaking. It's a more authentic way of being, because when you think about languages, we don't have direct translations for everything. And so what it means for someone, what a word means to them in Spanish, it's not quite like directly translatable in English. And so it's just a different way of being as well as speaking, in my opinion. And yeah, so anyways, that's what I've noticed about the culture. I'm trying to think of anything specific. To be honest, I felt like my upbringing was less about preserving culture and more about assimilating. So that is not like, I don't think, even though we celebrate certain traditions, like we have a funny tradition of eating 12 grapes at midnight on New Year's Eve, but I don't, like, no one's ever, we don't, when you think about the things you're thinking about, and you're processing. I'm getting a little heady, but it's just that if you're not really thinking about the cultural things that you're doing, or hearing about them, or talking about why we do certain things as opposed to just doing them, I think it's just a different way of, I don't think you're getting like the full picture. I don't think you're really focused on fully identifying in a culture. So I don't know. Yeah. I
Eat
also have to
12
be fair
grapes at
at
midnight.
midnight.
That's
Yeah.
that's unique.
Yeah.
That's
See, I
just one
can't
of
even
the
tell you
most
why we do
unique
it
things
right
I've
now. I'd
heard.
have to like double check with somebody to even know why we do
Oh.
that, or what they represent.
What is the con to assimilating when you're from a different culture that you think? And actually, matter of fact, let me posture that question actually. What was the experience like having to assimilate to a new culture while maybe feeling like you're not being introduced to your own as much as you should be, right?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I felt very displaced. Like, I don't feel like I fully belong to my Mexican Hispanic culture, and I don't feel like I fully belong to this Pacific Northwest American culture either, because I didn't really fit. I knew that I wasn't what everybody else was, and I knew that but I didn't know why I was different, if that makes sense.
Mm.
We didn't really focus on talking about things. It was so one instance that I can kind of recall was my grandmother had picked me up from school, and or maybe she was dropping me off. Either way, I'm a Leo. I'm a fire sign. I have a little sass sometimes, and I'm sure
Okay.
I was giving her sass, or maybe I wasn't, but the way that she spoke to me in Spanish, it sounded like somebody didn't appreciate it and didn't know what she was saying. And so it kind of became, let's not talk Spanish when we're at school,
Mm.
which lasted for maybe like a year and a half or so until I hit third grade. And my English or my homeroom teacher, she wanted us to all learn Spanish. So it
Meanwhile,
was,
you know it.
yeah. So it's always been really, I think there's some sort of like tension there for me when it comes to speaking Spanish, because it's not okay to be like a native speaker as much as it is okay to be English speaking first and then learn your second language as Spanish. That's kind of the way that it felt when I was growing up.
Mm.
Yeah. Sorry, my daughter's calling me.
Yes, no problem. Go
What's
ahead, take
that,
your time.
Piper?
I'm done.
Huh? No, I'm not done yet. Why? Want to come say hi? It's okay.
Yes.
Okay, well, when I'm done, you can totally have it. Okay. Are you hearing this?
No, I can't
Oh,
hear her.
okay. Yeah, she's negotiating right now. Yeah.
For the phone. How old is your daughter, by the way?
She's 5.
Oh,
Yeah.
mm.
Just
We're gonna
started
get into that
school.
later.
Yeah.
I definitely do want to talk about
Hmm.
parenthood. That's something that I want to partake in myself eventually. But we'll see what that leads to in the future.
Yeah.
Moving forward, though, I wanted to ask, what did it feel like to discover creativity in your life at a young age? Right? I think that that's like a real, just heavy question in terms of just like pinpointing that time where you had that eureka kind of moment, right? Where you were like,
Mm,
wow, I know that I feel something, a flow, and I'm going to actually follow that and do something creative. So go
yeah. That's a good question. I think what I want to preface is that I have so few memories as a child. It's a lot of PTSD.
ahead.
And so the little that I remember, I mean, I definitely feel like creativity probably saved me in a sense in terms of the outlet, and the using creativity as an outlet and expression, allows you to process deep emotions, especially as a kid. I think that's really important.
Mm,
Sometimes you don't have like the verbiage to say what you feel, or the, knowledge to know what you're experiencing. And so just taking um, time to express yourself
mm,
in a different way. I think self expression, right, is so important, especially for young kids. What I'm learning is how much we try to tell kids to be a certain way and not do a certain thing.
mhm,
It's really tough because I think kids kind of know who they are, or grow to know who they are. And it seems like such a weird, hurtful thing to like try to deter them from anything they enjoy, or unless obviously it's terrible, but there's really nothing that kids are drawn to, I feel like, that are like is actually bad for you. um
mm,
Eating Play-Doh is probably the worst one, right? But no, just like I
mm,
I I feel that, being able to use my creative outlets is just something I always had a lot of pride in. I did look through old boxes and found some things that I like. I wrote books and stuff when I was in grade school, and did like, I think, really terrible illustrations, but just the process of, putting like I wrote a book, right? Like doing those things and putting all those things together when you're a kid, you've never done them, right? So it's your first thing that you're doing, and you're, I can imagine being just so proud and being excited of accomplishing things and creating things. I think that's what I love about art in general. Like it seems, I know it's not coming out of nowhere in per se, but it is. It's you're creating something that wasn't there before, something from nothing, and I just think that's magic, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
being able to do that with your mind or your words or your, hands, if you're creating something physical or you're using them to play an instrument and create a composition, um, was empowering. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Ray. Yeah.
So, when did music start to come into your life? Was it at a young age? And how did that? I feel like music becomes the outlet of like, it's almost like sometimes a form of escapism. We go through turmoil and we're looking for a way to express that
Hmm.
or turmoil or experience that we had, whether it be good or bad. And so music does provide that outlet, right?
Yeah.
So what did that look like for you?
For me, I don't have any like big moments when I was a kid. We automatically did choir because we were in a Catholic private school, and so we had to do choir or some sort of like artsy thing. Um,
Hmm.
but we would sing in church, and so when I sang at church, um, yeah, definitely being in choir was an interesting experience for me. I don't think it made me love music right off the bat or find comfort in it. I did like, singing and being part, like I really loved doing harmonies, which I still love doing. Um,
Mm.
harmonizing with other people, creating this like well, not creating, now I create it, but then you had to learn, like I was in alto, and so alto parts typically never get the lead part. A lead is a song is typically going to be sung by soprano,
Hmm.
and I would always have to learn the harmony. And so that kind of like thinking just got solidified in my head. But I did really appreciate, like, at first it felt like, you're second, you're not singing the lead. So it's just, you're not as important. Um,
Mm.
later on, I started to feel like that in my life. But I think, harmonies are so beautiful. It's those people who like lift you up and can collaborate with other people that like make things move. So there's some sort of like metaphor in there for me. But in terms of like
Mm.
just experiencing music, singing, I learned piano. My next door neighbor, Miss Behrens, she taught me how to play piano, and we did a lot of classical pieces, which didn't really speak to me either. I would try to like make up the end, or start to change things in a piece, which is not what you're supposed to do when you're practicing. But it was more fun, so
Hmm.
I enjoyed doing that. Um, so I guess I kept having these experiences with music where I was like, I like this thing, but I don't think this is where I feel like the most comfortable or the most confident or I'm loving it the most. Um,
Mm.
I remember what I did love was going to the library and renting CDs, like all of this music, and I would just pick it out by the album cover. And I know, like they say, don't judge a book by its cover, but it was a way for me to just make a decision really quick because I'm really indecisive. So
Mm.
instead of having to do all of this research, I would just pick. I was like, no, I like this cover. I like this cover. And I would just listen to whatever it was. And a lot of the times it was folk music, sometimes in another language. And I think having all of these different sounds, I'm a person who does appreciate a lot of different genres, and it just taught me so many different things that you can do with your voice, that you can do with songwriting in general, in terms of like the arrangement of songs. And it was a good learning experience for me that I didn't really process that I was educating myself on music. And then I started realizing that I did have this experience when I was in my dad's car one time. I heard on the radio Vanessa Carlton's "A Thousand Miles," and right after they played the song, they said the word, they were talking about her, and it was when I heard the word songwriter that I was like, oh my god, you can write songs. I was like, I know that there's writers, but I was like, you can write songs, a songwriter. Like, it just was novel. It was just this like mind blown moment. where I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I want to do. And so that's when I started writing music. I had some creative projects in seventh and eighth grade. I did a soundtrack for my English class as a creative project for the book Fahrenheit 451. So I based a lot of my early music off of literary pieces. I ended up doing a cool, fun project in high school where I made sonnets and then put it to music and sang it and produced it and did all of the things for it
Mm.
and made a CD out of it. It was, yeah, too much probably for, I could have gotten away with much less work, but I was inspired and I wanted to do that. I wrote a song about the Great Gatsby for another English creative project class, and then a song about, oh man, I really wish there's this one song that I wrote for I think it was like either a philosophy or a religion class, and I
Mm-hmm.
really, it was, I forget what the creative prompt was, but I wrote a song to it, and I loved the song. I played it at like an Invisible Children's benefit concert, and I just don't even know where it is anymore.
Hold on, you
Um,
said an Invisible
Invisible
Children's benefit concert?
Children, yeah. So it's, do you know what Invisible Children is? It's
No, this is the
been a
first
long
time I'm
time
hearing about it.
since I've researched it, but it's an organization that works with children in Uganda who were forced to be um, soldiers over there during
Mm.
their civil wars. And in fact, I don't know if it was their civil wars. I'm really bad with history, especially when it comes to that. But that's what that organization was doing. And it really spoke to me because I felt invisible. Obviously, not to that extent. I had people who cared about me and who wouldn't let me be captured and put into a Ugandan army, but it was terrible to think about, and so I felt really really inspired to like help with that cause. But that's what that one song, I just, it bothers me to this day that I don't know what it
I,
is.
I wanted to say something
Mm,
about the invisible part. So I was one day talking to somebody recently at my job, and I said one of the most dangerous people you could come across, right, in life, or one of the most dangerous moments that happen between people is when a person is not seen or heard. It allows for
yeah,
something to be, it's a very dangerous space to occupy on a mental scale, in my opinion, on an emotional scale too, because it's just like you said, like you're invisible. So when was there a time that you felt like you were invisible, and how did you make sure that you were seen and heard, I guess, for people who may be going through this now?
that's a great question. I think for most of my life, I felt invisible in a way because I was dealing with something that I didn't know how to talk about, and I didn't. When I did try to talk to people about it, it was like I was speaking another language. They just couldn't understand what I was trying to express.
Mm,
And it wasn't until July of 2020 that, I think there had been, I've always had an awareness for mental health, but I think definitely during that time, everybody was very much like checking in on people, or, talking about how important it is to check in or to follow up with people, or to even, just reflect with yourself. And I finally got to talk to someone about something I had been experiencing my whole life,
mm,
with depersonalization and dissociation. And I finally was able to talk about it without being triggered. And
mm,
it was just, it was a really monumental change. I mean, I had talked about it for 20 plus years. And so it was nice to be seen and heard and validated. He was like, this is not super common, but it is a thing. Like, you are valid to feel your feelings, and also this studies show this can happen. And so it was just nice to have that understanding of somebody who'd been through similar things and who'd experienced um, those emotions and feelings before. So
mm. Thank you for highlighting that. I think that that was an important part of the conversation, especially for people who are, like I said before, navigating similar issues, who are not necessarily speaking out about it, that will hear this, and it will help them continue to navigate
I
the
hope
difficulties they
so.
face in life. Same here. I wanted to ask, what you already introduced two questions. But working in the music industry,
Hmm.
right? Let's fast forward a little bit. What
Yeah.
is one pro and one con that you can list off the top of your head?
I'm smiling at my baby. She's giving me funny faces. I would say a pro is definitely getting to meet such wonderful people. I think when you don't know like your own power and you don't know what your songs mean to people, and then just getting to hear people, or even people just telling you how much they love your personality or think that you're doing good things in the community. It's just that it's a really great feeling, and also to meet people who have stories to share, and that they choose you to share them with. I have a lot of people who open up with me
Hmm.
based off of things I've said in my songs, or uh, just with sharing who I am, and it feels so great to be able to help somebody through their day if I can, or to just get that help, mental help that I need when I'm feeling down. I can't tell you how many times that I've actually been really struggling, and it's hard to reach out to anybody, and so I don't. And then all of a sudden, I'm thinking I'm having the worst day, and somebody will message me or text me or call me out of the blue, and it feels good because it's like, oh, thank God, I was going in a spiral there and I didn't know how I was going to get out of that. So being in the music industry, having so many people who like either, want to share something with you, or, want to tell you what they think, um, that's definitely a pro. Con, I mean, I've always received a lot of unsolicited advice, and so it's not really surprising to me that I don't know what it is. I think I have this air of like, I don't know what I'm doing sometimes, and I need help. Um, and it's interesting to me that in the times that I am probably the most confident, there's someone who's like, no, 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 no. Let me tell you how you should. And I'm like,
Unsolicited
oh,
advice. I
yeah.
tell you, I that's so relatable. I felt that even with the platform I have. Not to
You know
say
what you
nobody
should
knows
do?
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason why sometimes I have an issue with that is because for one, my platform is not like a lot of other people's.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to compare it to things. And then
Yeah.
two, it's just like, yeah, come on, man. Like one thing that's a pet peeve for me is when it's unsolicited, but you haven't had the proper experiences to even advise me on what you're trying to give me advice on.
Right.
I think
I
that's
saw an
crazy.
MSN article that like suggested that you should, yeah, I've always gotten that, and then it got worse when I was pregnant. I think people
Oh.
definitely love to give that advice to young ones planning that they can see are, gonna have kids soon. People get
Mm.
sentimental, emotional, they want to share their experiences. I think that's great. Um, but no, yeah, not many people are asking me, hey, do you want to know what I think? So it's just getting used to just continuing to process that. And at this point, I try not to take it like I do anything that anybody tells me, even if it's unsolicited. I do think about it, but sometimes I get a little annoyed. It's a waste of time. I've made up my mind, and even if I'm wrong, or even if I'm making a mistake, I do sometimes want to see what that looks like. Even if I'm making something harder for
Mm.
myself, I am challenging myself for a reason. Um,
Exactly.
so even if there is an easier way to do it, I want to have this experience.
Now, the funny thing is about unsolicited advice. Now, when people talk, there's two ways that they can present things to you. I have a very suggestive nature, which sometimes lead a person to think that I don't know exactly what I'm talking about because it's not absolute. There's not
Yeah.
a conclusion type talk going on. It's not like, oh, this is what the law is and this is it.
Yes.
I'm like, maybe you should try this, and maybe you should try that. But I'm
Yeah.
speaking mostly from my experience. I just learned that that works better for people altogether, even if it is unsolicited
Hmm.
advice. Do it in a suggestive nature, is what I'm telling
Yeah.
people right now.
I agree.
Not in like, I know this for sure. I
Hmm.
came to find out that a lot of facts are strong opinions.
Yeah, you can quote that. That's yeah. It's just I appreciate people's, desire to help other people through things, but I think there's also a certain type of energy that you can bring to things that maybe that other person didn't. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, I see a lot of different types of energy, and what's works for one energy is not going to work for another person's energy, and
Mm-hmm.
vice versa.
Love
So
the way
it's
you
just important
said that.
to, yeah, it's important to try things in different ways. If something's not working for you, try it a different way. And even if, everybody is swearing by this one way, are you like all of these people who are giving you that advice? Maybe
Mm,
not.
mm. So, as a singer-songwriter, I gotta ask this question:
Mm,
what does the intersection of artistry and imagination look like? Now, I have an equation that I want to
oh,
introduce to you. I do.
okay.
I have these equations in my
Okay.
brain. So, I once thought that influence and imagination is the basis of creativity or innovation, is what I feel. The reason why I say that is because everything that's been created has to be influenced from something.
Mm,
And I got that
mm,
equation from watching movies and understanding like what they're in contact with when they make these movies, organizations and other things that these phantasmal movies come out of, but there is a sliver of truth that then got expanded upon, right?
mm-hmm,
So that brings the influence, which is the real life situation, but then the
mm-hmm.
imagination is where the fictional piece comes in, and that is where the creativity is
Ah,
expressed.
love that.
Does this
Yeah,
make sense?
it does.
Uh,
So give me
it's
the
something
question
that,
again. Where?
so the question is, where does artistry, what is the intersection of artistry and imagination? What does that look like? Where does that cross?
Uh-huh. Um, yeah, I think it is a cycle. It's like what came first, the chicken or the egg? How are you going to know what is of you and then what's of the universe?
Mm,
And even though it's coming through you, is it from your soul or is it from your spirit, like that's connected to the universe as a whole? I think
mm.
there's always a different my dog's whining.
There's a difference
I was like, what is
between
that
the
sound?
soul and the
In the
spirit.
spirit.
Is there,
Yes.
there's a
So
difference? This is the first time.
so
Go ahead.
well, okay. So the reason I'm saying this is because for me it seems like the soul is more that you have your soul's journey, that individualistic path. Um the part of you that is connected with everything that's around you, with the universe, that has those, that understands a language that you're not going to be speaking cognizantly, would be the spirit, the thing, that piece of you that's connected to the source or the universe, something that's bigger than you.
Mm,
um so I mean, that's what I'm thinking about in terms of how, like, what comes from you and then what comes from the universe. Like, even if it's coming from you, I mean, this is just a weird way of thinking about it, but like if you ate eggs for breakfast, what if it was in the eggs? Like, how are you to know that that came from just you or from your breakfast? Like, I don't know. It just, I
I get what
think
you're saying.
it's difficult to say. Yeah, I think what's important is to appreciate
Mm,
it and to
mm,
find how you relate to it and find meaning in it. I mean, I'm always
right.
looking to find meaning. And so I think as long as you find meaning in it, there's going to be that intersection of artistry and imagination because you've imbued yourself into it. You've internalized it.
Mm, wow,
What were
that
you
was interesting. The soul and spirit. I'm going to rewind that
Yeah.
for sure. I am. I need to hear that again. That was good. Continuing on. How has depression affected your life as because I know I read in your bio and you've also said it here. Though I feel like do you think the depression kind of stemmed from your childhood? Is
Oh,
is is,
yeah,
is that it's
I've had
because
depression for a really,
kind of
really long time. I've lived with this kind of like weight on my chest for a
mm,
really long time. Um, Not feeling like worthy of much. not feeling uh, like being really hard on myself or really down on myself. I think that the way that it manifests for me, though, is fortunate in that I am able to be perceived that I've got it all together or that I'm doing okay. And
Mm,
the unfortunate part is that I'm not. And how do I express that in a way that like people don't look at me funny or treat me differently or have still have respect for me? It's not like I'm going crazy. It's just frustrating when you're struggling and nobody gets it or says that they get
mm,
it. I don't know. I don't
mm,
find that I've had a lot of experiences where um I've expressed my feelings and had somebody be like, wow, that really, and that's not true. I think I've focused more on the negative side, and I think that has
mm,
to do with being
mm,
depressed.
mm,
So I mean, it's just a way to keep safe in a way. Like if I feel
right.
like everything's going to go wrong and then it happens to go wrong, I've saved myself from disappointment and I haven't hoped for anything better than what I've gotten. And so I should be somewhat satisfied with what I've received. But if I'm not, but that's such a lack mindset. I when I'm doing my best, I feel like that comes from an abundant mindset of like, everybody's around me is doing really well. And I think there's more than enough of that to go around. And I should feel good about the things that I'm doing in my life and celebrate those things for myself. And, it's just the balance for me about like the guilt that we talked about earlier. It's, am I doing enough? What is enough? Why can't I recognize that I am worthy as I am, or that we all have inherent value?
Mm,
Um, why is that something that I don't fully embody? Even though I treat other people like that's true. Um, so it's just, uh, I think it hasn't really kept me from doing a ton when it comes to like I can keep commitments that I've made for the most part. I get up every morning because I know that I have to. Like I have to feed my daughter or I have to take her to school. Like those things, those requirements, those responsibilities. Um, Fortunately, I've never had my depression like say like no, where you don't have energy for that and you don't even like I can get up and do those things. I can be responsible for those things, but when it comes to maybe commitments that I've tried to make for myself or like and forth, going back and forth on whether or not I should have done something or whether I could do something.
mm,
Sometimes I ask for too many people's opinions and I
mm,
shouldn't. I should just
mm.
do it. I should just try because I know I want to. And even if I kind of know it's a mistake, I still want to try it because then I'll have the experience. And then I'll
Mm,
have this story like to reflect on later for myself. Like what I just consistently want to learn.
mhm,
And so I don't think depression is really, I think sometimes depression has kept me from wanting to grow
mm,
because it's safer to stay where I am and to not fail or fall flat on my face.
mm.
Even if I'm really the only one who's paying attention to that, you know?
I'll, I have a lot to say actually on
Yes,
this. So
I'd love to hear it.
openly, I will openly admit that I struggle with depression, a lot actually, due to the fact of what I've been exposed to, while I was homeless. So I've been exposed to a lot of information about the world and how it operates, and it's a lot.
I
And
can
it's a lot
imagine.
to kind of like, you can never unlearn it or unexperience it. And
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes what happens is this thing where you just ask the question, like, what is it all for? Like, what am I doing everything for real?
Yeah.
You know, what's the point?
What is the point?
I mean, especially when you kind of see like we pay taxes, we work, like we live to work, we really
Mm-hmm.
don't have a life
I know.
in most
There's,
perspectives.
you really just have like enough to live and like that's it. And then you have, yeah, I get it.
Right. And so I just feel like, oh, the camera view is nice this way.
Okay.
Just want to let
That's
you
a
know
little
that.
better. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to charge
Um,
my phone and this is the closest to get. There we go. Yeah, that
yeah.
is a little cozier. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the stars in the background is really.
Yeah. That's my daughter's room. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's really doing a number there for the
Yeah.
background right here. It's nice. But regardless of the fact, um, basically just battling through that on a consistent basis and just continuing to remind myself of a reason to like live and push forward is just sometimes something I just struggle with. I'm not even gonna lie. And it's actually almost like an everyday struggle, right? It's not even like once a week kind of thing. It's like, oh God, like here we go again with the same, cycle. So
Yeah.
this is why I decided to get back into the work that I feel like is important, which brings us here today, right?
Right.
I wanted to ask, what is your understanding of anxiety? Because my understanding of anxiety, which is totally different from most people's understanding of anxiety,
Okay.
I will introduce after you say your
Uh,
your
Okay.
definition of
Yeah, I think
it.
there's different types of anxiety. I think what I've noticed in the self work that I've done is that I definitely notice a difference between anxiety from my body and anxiety from my mind. Um,
Hmm.
so for me, I feel that anxiety is um, a manifestation of this negative energy around either a place or a thing or a person or an event or a task that you have yet to do. Just this little fear that is really um, you're being obsessed by it.
Hmm.
Um, like I think for a long time I didn't really have a lot of experiences with anxiety. I haven't had a lot of experiences with anxiety up until having my daughter. And it is uh it, there's just you I think part of it is like the natural human thing where you're just like, oh my gosh, I have to keep this thing alive. um and that's like a big part of that anxiety, but just not only do you have to like provide and do things for yourself, but you're responsible for this other thing's survival. I think it's really it, responsibility can be really anxiety provoking. And so
Hmm.
and I think a lot of that mental anxiety I just hadn't really experienced before, because I would usually like shut it off by depersonalization or dissociating, or um, I just reverted to depression because it was more comfortable for me to not feel and to be numb about it. So I feel like I really pushed anxiety away for a really long time. And then um and then now, since I've done a lot of work to like be in my body, I've felt physical anxiety that I'm not used to feeling. And that's been also really tough, because now all I want to do is get away from that feeling and
Hmm.
dissociate from it or depersonalize it. But it's I have more of a pull to stay, and so it keeps me feeling this physical anxiety, but I'm working through it in a way that it's becoming more manageable, or also trying to break it down, like, and have and really question why I feel the need to feel it, or where it's coming from, and why am I being affected like this?
What is deep?
What's that? I'm not done yet. Do you want to come sit for a minute? You're bored? How are you bored? You just are. Do you want to do blocks in here? I don't know, but if you find them, you can do them in here. Hmm. Hmm. Sorry, what were you
Yeah,
saying?
no, it's no problem. Take your time. You said, so what is depersonalization, by the way?
So
Just out of
depersonalization
curiosity.
is kind of like the feeling that you get when you're not really a person. and you can feel like separate. Really, it's kind of like watching your life as a movie, play as a movie. You're not really involved. Um, um, uh, the way, hold on. So I'm getting anxiety talking about it, and that's why I'm struggling with it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is typically what happens when I try to explain dissociation, depersonalization. So basically, there's two different types. And I'm not. I know that I'm. Uh, Depersonalization and dissociation. Derealization is the other thing that I'm. So, depersonalization is where you don't feel like you're a person. You see your life happening, but it doesn't feel like it's your life, and it doesn't feel like it's you. And everybody has varying degrees of how this actually feels for them, but that's the general idea.
Mm-hmm.
Derealization is where is also a part of that, where but it's specific to your environment. Everything that you is around you doesn't feel real,
Mm-hmm.
and so you can have both, or you can have one. And sometimes these things can happen to anybody for any reason. A common experience would be like if you had a surgery, and maybe you kind of like can see yourself going outside of your body while it's happening. That's a fairly common-ish experience. Um, Trauma. It's associated with trauma. It's that the idea that like when you're in a life-threatening situation, or something that feels life-threatening, maybe it's not, but it feels life-threatening, you want to detach from your body so that you're not in your body when whatever it is happening, or you are so thrown off by whatever you're experiencing that it doesn't seem real. Um, yeah. So.
Interesting. Oh, so I wanted to follow up with you, by the way. Thank you for the beautiful explanation. I want to follow up with you, by the way, about anxiety. So
Yes.
somebody one day in California was talking to me, and they was like, "You have social anxiety." And I was like, "Please." Um, I don't have social anxiety. I'm just kind of allergic to people's ignorance, right? Yeah,
That's a good one.
yeah, I don't have
Okay.
that. But whatever the case may be, what I found out is through empathy, because I'm empathetic. If it's a form
uh
of anxiety that I feel like I do have, where I pick up people's energy and it rattles me,
uh
right, a little bit, and so
uh
it causes me to have to either like get out their presence or just like let me try my best to not interact with this person too much. But anxiety, in my opinion, is your intuition's or soul or spirit's way of telling
mm,
you that the person is not good for you. Because I don't get anxiety with everybody. The people who I
yeah.
naturally flow with, oh my goodness, it's just like water,
Yeah.
from a waterfall. Smooth, nice, maybe cascading a little bit, but and overall it's smooth.
Mm-hmm.
But with people, other people who I may not see eye to eye with, or my spirit is just not in alignment with, trust me, I've been in situations where we didn't have to speak. And the person from jump knew that they didn't like me, and I knew from jump that I didn't like them, and that was okay. It was for whatever was inside of us. And
Mm-hmm.
trust me, I've been through tons of those situations. So I really do think that anxiety in itself is like a radar system, in a sense, for those who you may not be in alignment with, or maybe just too far, like on the opposite scale of who you are,
Mm.
as a being, or what you are in terms of where your
Right.
spirit may come from and what you represent,
Oh,
right?
that's a really
So
interesting way. Yeah. Let's think about it.
that's,
I like that.
oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
It aligns too, which with other things that I've heard about emotions, is that the emotion that you're experiencing, it's a reflection of what your soul is feeling. Like it's not it's you don't have this emotion for no reason. You're not having this anxiety for no reason.
Mm.
um I think a lot of people have
Ooh.
associated anxiety with, I'm having it for no reason, it's coming out of nowhere. I've heard that a lot, and I feel that there is a place that it's coming from. There is a reason.
Mm.
It's your system is trying, like you said, to tell you something about
Mhm.
what's going on. It's like saying, "Hey, hello, red flag." I've definitely had that experience with what you're talking about with people.
Mhm.
Um, and it comes as the same way that I would dissociate. I would kind of like just shut off my energy. I'd be like, mm-mm. And my energy just, there's something that just turns away. Like I'm still maybe facing the person, but my energy just got shut off. And it's because and then I later find out something about this person.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, so that's why I had that reaction and why I didn't really want to be involved in that situation. And I'm glad, but it is, you have to trust your intuition in order for it to work for you. If you're
Mm-hmm.
not trusting your intuition, then you just maybe just going to experience the anxiety and just say that you're anxious. But if you don't, if you're thinking about it like you are, what can I learn from this situation, and what is this teaching me
Mm-hmm.
about myself or about other people?
I also want to say thoughts, right? While we was talking about that, and then I'll get on to the next question. But thoughts, real quick, when you said that everything kind of happens for a reason, emotions, happen for a reason. Everything kind of happens for a reason. Overthinking. People say overthinking is a thing. I actually disagree because I believe that every thought. Oh, I'm, can you hear me? Oh,
Yes,
there we go.
sorry, it just cut out. Yeah.
So overthinking, I believe every thought happens for a reason, right? Now, what I believe people get confused overthinking with is getting caught in a cycle of thought, which is very similar but different. It's like you keep
Mm-hmm.
thinking about the same thing in slightly different ways, but you don't do anything about it, so it keeps going in like this circular manner inside your head at rapid paces.
Yeah.
You break out of that by either doing another action to move forward what the thing that you're thinking about is, or you calm yourself down and let it kind of dissipate. So,
Yeah. No, I think that's um shoot, that just distracted me. But yeah, I, I was vibing with what you were saying. I think
I understand.
I
I can repeat it
yeah,
if you
could
need me
you?
to a little bit.
Just the end there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, overthinking is not like a thing, right? In my opinion, I think that people get caught in cycles of thought,
Yeah.
which is you repeating the same thoughts, maybe in a slightly different fashion over and over again, but you're generally sticking to the same topic, right? You're
Yeah.
not like changing that thought. But in order for you to snap out of that, from my experiences, you either have to execute step two of the plan, like move forward with whatever you're thinking about. Like, okay, let's
Mm-hmm.
say I'm thinking about talking to this woman, but I start getting nervous and I'm like, oh, I'm getting caught in the cycles of thought. I just need to walk over there, say hello, and take my
Yeah.
risks, right?
Yeah.
Or you need to let the thought dissipate, like anger, right? You get mad at something. I used to get mad at things for long periods of time. Nowadays, I have it a short period of time. I've learned how to transmute and dissipate the emotion for the most part. I still have that issue where the emotion settles in and I get pretty mad about something. But
Yeah.
for the most part, I let things like go, right? Especially because I'm in the service industry in my day job. And that's, you can't be hung up on what one customer does. You have a whole bunch of other people you have to serve,
Yeah.
right? So it's just kind of keeping that in mind. And that's
Yeah.
why when you talked about every thought happens, excuse me, for a reason, I believe that. I just don't like when people say overthinking. Sometimes you think about these things over and over again because you need to
Mm-hmm.
take action about what is it
Yeah.
that you're thinking about,
No,
right?
that's very true. And I think I see this a lot when I mean, I know I have difficulties making decisions when there are so many options. Um, but just taking action sometimes is important, like being spontaneous and just trying something for the heck of it. You'll discover something new about yourself or whatever it was that, why that emotion came up for you. But I heard a statistic recently about like that about 90% of your thoughts that you're having today you had yesterday and the day before that and the day before that. So it's really hard to change your thinking pattern. And so but it's not hopeless. How do you do it? Like you take action, you try something, and then you make habits out of a new action that you weren't used to doing, and you slowly change those thoughts. And like you were saying, it's like you can say it in a different way, but if you're still telling the same story, same general plot line of your past or of your experiences, chances are that tomorrow you're gonna experience that same thing. And it's
Mm.
just because that's statistics. I think there's a lot of do you have pets?
Yeah, I personally don't own the dog, but
Yeah,
it lives here with
it
us.
was, yeah.
She's
So
cool.
it's just everything always gets under the bureau for some reason. But hearing that it's been eye-opening. I've been working a lot about my thought process and just taking a inventory of the thoughts that I'm thinking. What are those 90% thoughts that I'm thinking, and what story do they tell?
You
Which
know what
direction?
I've been also kind of dealing with the pursuit of happiness, literally,
Yeah.
like not the movie, but like in my emotional chart inside my body. I'm like, damn, why do I feel so like sometimes negative and depressed a good amount of times? And you're like, wow, I need to actually like get to this positivity, and then I
Yeah.
get there, and then it starts fleeting. You're like, wow, this, wow. And then you
Well,
try to like,
mhm.
you even fall into realms of escapism, trying to pursue the
Yes.
happiness, right?
Yeah.
So,
Because humans are just kind of wired like we get something that we wanted, and then we're like, awesome, what's next? And it's just a matter of continuing life at that point. But um, one thing that has helped me recently with the thoughts too is just how much of this is needs to be known, and then how much can be known. Like, is this thing that I'm thinking about, is there a way to know this and settle my anxiety about it, or is it something I can't know really,
or control.
and do I need to let that go? Yeah.
Hmm.
And then if it can be known, does it need to be known? Does it need to be shared? Does it need to be thought about 20,000 times a day, just because
Mm.
it's true? Like, why should I put all my focus on that when I want to create something different? Then I should be focused on what I'm trying to create, which is not that.
Mm. This has been a great conversation and interview so far. I just want to let you know that um, I'm
I'm
going
gonna
to
have a good
slightly
time
take
too.
this in a different direction. No, for sure.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, I think a more, I don't know, a question that puts forth transmutation, right? So, um, do you gain inspiration from the turbulent times that you went through in life, and how did you transform that into art?
Yeah, I think I've always been inspired by experience, which is why I've made so many mistakes and why I've tried so many things. It's just because I want to know what that feels like in my soul, how it feels in my body. Like,
Mm,
I just need to know, I want to experience it in order to relate to other people better, to understand other people better, and to ultimately decide who I am better. I think that for a long time with my issues, I didn't feel like I could form a solid identity just because I have so little and few personal memories. Um, and so trying to think about like who I am, and what do I want to do in this life, and why am I here. um I think there was no other choice but to find meaning in the struggles and to find inspiration through any turmoil that I was experiencing, because otherwise I didn't feel like there was really much reason to continue. And I think that's the only way that I've been able to make it through, is kind of like thinking of myself as like a character in a book, and I don't know what's written on the next page, and I just have to like keep following the story and choosing to the best of my ability what I think is best for me. There's a book that I read, the
mm,
um, something about the good things, and it literally is a character who knows she's a character in a book, and and I gained a lot of inspiration from what I read. I think too, like I was a big reader. I've always been a well, not always. Lately now, I don't read so much, but definitely when I was a kid, I would be that kid who was like writing down every single book that I ever read. And
mm,
I wish I had continued that. Um, but then there was like what's the point?
mm,
And
mm.
uh, I stopped. But I've
I,
learned so much from, books that I read. It's another form of experience. It's like watching a movie, but. different.
I did the same thing. I now watch a lot of movies and shows because I gain a lot of information from that, to be honest with you. I analyze them in a certain way.
Mm,
Um, but nonetheless, when you was talking about who you are, like figuring out that there's sometimes where it's like I'm pretty solid in knowing who I am. So I try to figure out what am I, right? And I know that confuses a lot of people when they hear me say that. They're like, what do you mean? What are you?
mm,
So in this book, Happiness is the Way by Wayne Dyer, all right? It's a really good book. And he talks about stripping ourselves of labels
mm,
and really just standing alone with like what's inside of ourselves and being like, well, what is this? How would I even identify it if I had to describe it,
mm-hmm,
right? Like I consider it unearthly and myself a rogue spiritualist when it comes to trying to even start to describe what I am besides outside of who I am, right? Because who
mm-hmm.
I am is simple. It's like I'm Troy, also known as Wise Truth. You know, I'm a creator, innovator, journalist, right? All these fancy labels,
Yeah.
if you ask me, right? But at the end of the day, it's like, what are you? Where do you really come from? Like, what does that look like? You know, because there's a lot of things
Mm-hmm.
that I've experienced in my life. I too was part of the church. Just to let you know, I sung in the choir myself. I was also part of a Catholic church where I was a tenor, right?
Oh, wow.
And so just I lived a
Yep.
lot of life.
Yeah.
I have a lot of stories. But the thing is basically I'm saying that you just never know like what people have believed, right? Let's say in church, I don't necessarily believe, and so I have to be like, I don't know, like where does that come from? That belief outside of just the world
Mm,
constraints, right? Where does that come
mm-hmm.
from? So I don't know. I think it's important that people challenge themselves in that way once they figure out who they are, to then kind of push back, push farther. Also, I think
That's
that
really
this
good.
book is also good if you're dealing with
Mm,
depression or something of that nature. Happiness is the way. It's in the title, obviously.
yeah.
Definitely a book. Obviously, read it with a filter. I read everything with a filter, but I think it's a good book to like definitely help you sort out certain things that you may be going through in life, and definitely give you a good amount of encouragement to do so.
Mm, yeah, I
Um,
definitely need
how?
to check that out.
Thank you. How do you capture the human experience in your music?
It's a good question. Um,
Mhm.
I think always making sure that somehow the emotion of what I was feeling or experiencing is reflected in either the lyrics or the music. Um, I think it's, I think I enjoy songwriting so much, and I think that others see my talent for songwriting through my lyrics because um, putting the emotion into the music for me comes more with production versus like when I'm thinking about so a song, right? You've got lyrics and you got the music,
Mhm.
and I think when I write, I'm more focused on how am I showcasing the emotion through the lyrics um, versus how am I showcasing the emotion through the music. Sometimes that happens. I think more recently in my career that's been happening, but I think when I first started writing, it was like, how do I say how I'm feeling without just saying how I'm feeling so that it seems, you know, interesting enough for people to want to care. And I think that's why I always really focused on putting my emotions in the lyrics. How can I tell this story that I'm going through, experiencing, or have previously have gone through, or that I've seen someone else go through, and I'm kind of like putting myself in their shoes. How do I word this in a way that's conversational, that makes people put themselves into that own situation? Um, and then how, when I get to the production part of it, like the production part is really the scarier part to me in that like there's so many directions that I can do with the production. So the production is about putting that song that I've written to music in a studio, to adding the instruments, to adding the harmonies. How do I make, which moments am I making bigger by adding more sound? Which moments am I making bigger by removing sound and making that like a very sparse area of production so that the lyrics can really shine. or do I make the lyrics shine by like putting a lot of harmonies in it? I think it just depends on how I want to communicate the soul of that song.
mm,
But I guess one song that comes to me right off the top of my head is a song called Honestly, that
mm,
when I hear the song now, I feel something immediately from the guitars, and it's not, I didn't do the guitar. Um, I
mm,
can't. My guitarist Blake Tomash did the guitar, and so he put his emotion into that song. He put
mm,
his work into creating that guitar line, and so did my song already like emotionally communicate that to him, and then he's pulled that from himself, or is it from his experience? You know what I mean? Like the inspiration that we were talking about earlier, is it, are
mhm,
you getting inspiration from someone else, or is it from, so
mm,
that creation that happened, was it my work that inspired Blake to play this beautiful guitar, or did Blake play this beautiful guitar based off the emotions that he drew from his own experiences to fit that energy? um
mm,
and so just a lot of heavy stuff in that song. It's about me being unseen, unheard.
mm,
And so um, I definitely feel that I'm able to do that, which I'm really grateful for, because I think sometimes it comes down to communication. Some artists aren't really able to get through their message. Um, or some people are
mm,
maybe like driving, it's too obvious, right? I think that's the thing about art. It's subjective, and we all have our own, we're all, subjectively judging it. And so what,
mm,
makes sense, or what inspires somebody, or what, draws somebody in may not draw somebody else in. But that's
mhm,
a song that I consistently get, like, people feel something from that song. um and so
mm,
yeah, I think that's how I think about, how do I put my personal experiences in it. I want to make sure the emotion stands out. I want to make sure that the feeling carries through. I don't want people to feel as low as I felt, but I want people to feel. Someone described it to me. They said your music, or your, I couldn't remember. I should have asked, clarified if it was
mm,
my music or my voice, or she said that I think she said it was my voice, but it made it feel like a hug. And that's just so powerful. Like, you know, hugs are really undervalued. They're just so good for you. And so, giving a person a mental hug through my music, I mean, that was just such a blessing. It was really cool to hear that happened for that person. But then is it their internalization of the music that I did, or is it me? Where does it
mm.
come from? So,
I really
um,
like that
yeah,
perspective. I really do. I really do. That was
that was a fun
that was amazing.
mental
Yeah, that was cool.
progression there.
Yeah, the emotion, boy.
Good question.
What?
Yeah.
Huh? Oh,
Good,
thank
great
you. I
question.
appreciate.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really thought about these. I really like coming with questions that really provoke thought. Really make you dive deep inside of yourself, and pull out what is
Hmm.
important to you. All right. Um, but moving forward, I think a random question that came up in my brain was just emotion.
Mm.
Why? What is the importance of communicating your emotion through a song or just in life? Period. I think we are moving, like you said, depersonalization earlier. I think we're moving into a society where it's, becoming a little bit more popular to not show emotion,
Hmm.
right? And to be this, oh, I could take it on the chin all the time kind of person,
Yeah.
while simultaneously going crazy inside and not being able to express that to people, leaving people most likely unseen and unheard, like what we talked about.
Mhm.
So, what does it look like to express that emotion or even deal with just emotion itself uh, in today's society? You think?
I think it just depends on where you are. I think sometimes there are certain places where it feels safe for people to
Mm,
express their emotion and be themselves, and there's other places it does not feel safe. And
mm,
recognizing the difference, to protect yourself, I think, is one of the best things that you can do at first, because I just had so many experiences where I've shared my emotions with people who either didn't have the capacity to handle it, like mentally, or sometimes they didn't have capacity to handle it emotionally. Um, and so I got very deterred from sharing my emotions based off of those experiences. However, I had a really interesting experience with a gal that I went to high school with, and she said, I just want to thank you for this one day that happened. I was going through a really hard time and I just started crying. And all you did, like, you didn't even ask me any questions. You just sat next to me and, like, put your arm around me and just sat with me. And I don't really remember that at all. But it does sound like something I would have done. I don't like to see people in pain. I don't like to see people hurting. It's really hard for me to walk right by them, especially if I'm physically just walking by them. I will stop. Um, it's really difficult, you know, when you're driving past. We have a big homeless population in Tacoma, and it's hard to drive by and not want to stop somehow and do something. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to be. It's just there's a desire for me to help people who are in need. And so then I got to think about, like, how realistically I can do that, or just what, I don't know. It's hard to do stuff that you feel called to do. Sometimes you're worried about what other people think. Um,
I
and
say that.
so, yeah, yeah,
Because
it's stupid. And also you're worried, like, you know, you have fears for yourself, and just, you know, but where do those fears come from? Are they real or not? Like, what's the likelihood that this fear, you know, is actually gonna
this is,
occur?
and I can understand these fears to a degree. Because I'll tell you one thing, it hurts if you've been working on a project for like a month, let's say straight, and you finally put it out, and you don't get the results you were looking for.
Crickets. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough sometimes. I mean, we know as creatives, right? Like what that
Yeah.
feels like, you know. Um, Even with my interviews, I've found myself in a situation where comparison was still literally stealing my joy. Like
Yeah.
literally, I was like, oh yeah, I'm looking at what everybody else is doing. Plus, I got my own thing, and I'm like, wow, where does this fit into today's society when I see all these other things run rampant in the algorithm that really don't impact people in a
No.
positive way, in my opinion, or really add any substance to their life. And I feel like, you know, I substance to people's lives. And so I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, it's crazy how that dynamic kind of works there.
It
But
is really
nonetheless,
interesting to think about that. We know, like, as humans on an individual basis, and like even studies, you want to, like, bring all the studies that you can about showing how important it is for people to feel connection and
mm,
positivity, and like how positivity can lengthen your life physically. Like, there's so many benefits to being a good person and to
mm,
doing things that are good for you, like eating healthy or exercising. And
mhm,
but sometimes we just don't do it, or like, why are we putting so much, or why does America have so many advertisements for medication?
mm,
Like, is that
mm,
really the solution? How is that the solution? And yet, like, you know, there's a ton of, like, teenage girls on Instagram, like, feeling like they're not worthy of anything. I don't know. I totally relate to what you're saying in terms of, like, what content is pushed. I think that um, the emotions that are typically associated with those things that are going viral is, like, with shock or violence
mhm,
or anger or frustration, as opposed to love, excitement, support, generosity. So it's like, yeah, how do we, I don't know. I think, yeah, every emotion too has its, like, time and place. And if I'm experiencing, like, deep anger or um, anything like that, I don't want to be around people. I don't want other people to have
mm,
absorbed these feelings that I'm having. And so I don't love to share those things. I think it's important to talk about them, but I personally like to do it after the fact, that I process them, because I think too, when I'm talking about emotions are a sign. I'm not done yet, but I can tell how patient you've been. So if you want to go grab it, you can. You can. Thank you so much. Um, and like, knowing when to give people a little joy, like, even if you know, want to be judgmental and feel like they didn't deserve it yet, maybe, like, uh, you want to reward effort too. I think that's another thing that we don't talk enough about. I'm not saying that like that everybody needs a trophy. I don't think it's to that extent. But there's a study done on children about like telling people that telling them that they did it just right, or celebrating them for the effort. And celebrating them for the effort made them get better time after time after time. Just celebrating like, good job on your test, you got 100, just focusing on the result as opposed to the effort, actually showed like a deterioration of results. So I don't know exactly what that says and how many, I don't have to go into the whole study. I do want to like always dive into the specifics and think about something like really down to the minutia. But in general, if we think about how our brains work and try to avoid things that we think are dangers to ourselves, versus if we were more focused on having positive experiences, then we're focused on avoiding bad experiences. I think I think fear is just one of those emotions, especially since the pandemic, like that has just overtaken our society. And I've seen this just terrible toxic fear, and I do think it's toxic, and I don't like it. I just don't. I think fear does so. I guess we just watched this movie last night, but there's a movie out called Dune, and they're doing a sequel soon. But one of the phrases, one of the quotes is, "Fear is the mind killer." And it does kill the mind so much when we are just focused on fear and not how can we work through the fear? What's the next like possible step that I could possibly do to work through this? I think it just, it really just depends on your mindset. And it took me a long time to get to this place about emotion, as opposed to emotion is bad, emotion is wrong, it's not safe to share, and then just avoided that for the rest of my life. I think I would continue to find myself in that cycle that you kind of mentioned earlier of like just this repeating narrative, and just keep putting myself in that, victim place.
Ooh, I love it. One narrative that I'm working on changing is the narrative when it comes to dating. Media has done such a great job of just tearing it to shreds,
I
man, tearing it to
don't even,
shreds, and
yeah,
it's really bad. The things that I've seen people become induced by, right? So, media is the greatest weapon known to mankind, and so there's media inducement, right?
I'm
Where you
still listening,
allow,
but I definitely
yeah,
have to get my dog's like toy, because it's just, he
yeah,
won't leave me
all
alone.
right, no problem, no problem.
But I'm listening.
But yeah, media inducement has people acting out on things that may not be in alignment with them, but they're not fully sure about that or how that even looks because hadn't they haven't had any experiences outside of what the internet shows them, right? And what their friends are telling them. And so I kind of want to work on that aspect of like just getting out of what other people think when it comes to like dating and building my own experiences from that. Because that
Absolutely.
being trapped in that cycle of thought leaves a lot of us men and women alone, right? It's like, let's put ourselves out there, be vulnerable, but then who do you be vulnerable with, right? So it's definitely a
Right.
slightly complex situation, but
Absolutely.
nonetheless one that I think is important, especially for our procreate aspect of procreation as humans, right?
Yeah. That
To address.
the
But oh,
yeah,
go
what I
ahead.
hear about the dating world right now is just like it is really, and it's difficult too. It's like your mind is your feed, right? And so what algorithm are you subscribing to? Like, what are you feeding your mind that is continuing this like thoughts? I guess the one that the easiest example that I come to a lot is that some women think all men are trash. And so if you think that all men are trash, that's probably what you're going to see on your social media feed. That's what you're going to see every time you go outside. And so just having that like preconceived notion that all men are trash, it just is going to wreck your entire experience, because there's no other, where is the outlier going to fit? Like, if some man isn't treating you like trash or is trying to be nice to you, but your internalization of that is that he's doing it to gain advantage of you. You know, it's just that's what you're going to get eventually, because that's kind of what you're expecting. It's kind of like you've ordered it at a restaurant and they're like, here you go. You're like, I didn't want that. And like, well, that's what you ordered.
Yo, the way you said that with the face was like spot on. um, but
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you take this in a different direction
Mm-hmm.
as we begin closing down the interview bit by bit. But what has being a mother taught you about being a woman?
Mm. Um,
Mm,
I mean, I'll admit, like, I was really worried to have a daughter because I thought maybe I'm gonna have this terrible relationship. I didn't have a terrible relationship with my mom growing up, but it was definitely strained in some aspects. And so, thinking about that, I was worried and I had fear that if I had a daughter, like, I wasn't gonna have a good relationship with her. Um, it's definitely made me so much stronger. I mean, it's given me a lot of anxiety, like I mentioned earlier.
mhm.
Out, out. My dogs love to get into my daughter's room and chew all the things. But you know, it's I feel like it's empowered me. It's made me realize what I want in my life, what I want to show her, and that has made like the fire burn brighter in a sense. And so I feel more strongly about things than I used to. I'm definitely a person who doesn't like to have strong opinions, and the reason I don't like to have strong opinions is because I like to leave room for magic. I like to leave room
Mhm.
for other perspectives. I don't want to I want to be
You
surprised.
you
I want to
remind
be
me of
surprised.
when I used to tell people I plan things up to a certain point to leave space for the unknown. Go
Oh,
ahead, continue.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. And the unknown doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be negative. It doesn't have to be bad.
That's true.
Um, it kind of just depends. I have a pleasant expectation is what I'm trying to have. A pleasant expectation of things to come that I have no control over. I have no idea what's going to happen. But I have an
Mm,
idea that it's going to be for my benefit in some way, even if it's a lesson, or if I recognize it immediately as a blessing. It's one of those two, and it's most of the time it's going to be both eventually if I can apply it in the right way. I think sometimes
mm,
we are asked to learn lessons that we need to learn maybe a few times. And I've had so many experiences where I've had to learn this lesson over and over. And, you know, towards the end of it, you're like, that's what I was missing, like just this little piece. But, you know, every time you get a little bit further,
mm,
every time you get a little bit um, more sure of
mhm,
yourself. And so I think that's what motherhood has helped with me being a woman and knowing that like I am not perfect. I'm human, and most moms
mm,
feel like maybe they're not doing enough or they're not doing it right or they're not, there's just so many things that I've seen this a lot too in some parents that when their kid does something, they say, "Oh, that was great, but you missed this little part. Like you could have done this better."
mm,
And that's where I recognize how maybe I've done that to myself, because I think that's another thing that I personally experienced having a kid was getting to reparent myself and
mm,
deciding what was going to stay and what was going to leave and what I didn't like, because we kind of talked about families at the beginning, like what I learned from my family that because we didn't have this thing but we did have this thing.
mm,
So it's just trying to figure out. I think I really want my daughter to have emotional wealth. That was something I didn't have like a big understanding of when I was growing up. And I think that made it a
mm,
lot harder to achieve things that I wanted to achieve because I was so distracted or so overwhelmed or so distraught by the emotions of things. Not to say that you shouldn't feel your emotions. It's just like letting depression keep me from trying new things or keep me from sharing myself or being myself. That was not good. I wish I had tried to find myself sooner and not just been afraid that I hadn't been afraid, that I
mm.
didn't have so many fears. And so I don't want to raise my kid in fear. I don't want her to learn things that, I don't want in my life anymore.
Emotional
And
wealth.
emotional
I would like you
wealth.
to expand on that
Yeah.
for
So
me.
think sometimes what I've seen a lot when there are families maybe that who've been brought up in poverty, they want to provide uh, physical wealth. They want, their kids to go to these really nice schools. They work really hard to get a really good paying job and to provide their children with all the things that they didn't have when they were growing up. And they do that specifically because they felt like they didn't have it. I specifically felt like I didn't have enough emotional. I mean, not many people did. Not many people still do. I mean, we're still getting into this new way of thinking about emotions and that everybody has them. And so how do we talk about them? How do we work through them? How do we allow space for them? Everybody handles emotions differently. So does everybody honor their own process of dealing with those emotions? And so we're just learning. It's knowledge. Knowledge is wealth. And so for me, emotional wealth is that emotional knowledge that I didn't feel like I had growing up, that I want to work really hard to achieve and gain, and then pass that on to my daughter because I want that future for her.
Mm. What do you feel about emotional intelligence? I have a perspective on
Yeah,
that. But go ahead, continue.
emotional intelligence. I think that the more that you know yourself, we had a guest in here earlier. His name is Raysos, and there's one of his songs called Vision, and I don't remember the exact lyric, but he talks about knowing yourself is power. Like when you know yourself, you are in control. Like, and not to say that like you can only control so much, right? And so what you can be in control of is your emotions. Um, it's important to feel them, though. It's not important to like trash them. You want to respect your emotions. And so how do you do that in a way that that is also respectful to the people around you who are picking up on those emotions? Not everybody's an empath, but one thing that I've been studying through human design is that about 50% of the population has a defined emotional center and the other 50% doesn't. And so what that kind of means is that we're all playing off of emotion or each other and being influenced and being conditioned by the emotions of others around us. And again, I think that just comes back to like what environment you're in. And I want an environment that is emotionally safe for her, or that she doesn't have to worry that it's not emotionally safe, and that she feels safe to share when she needs to. And
Wow.
that I can hold space for that. Yeah.
What does an emotionally safe environment look like?
I mean, I think time to do it in your own way.
Mm.
Um, an energy that is just loving and accepting, um,
Mm.
where you don't have to fear what other people are thinking. Um, and you don't have to fear what you're thinking.
So I also want to say this back to reverting back to the emotional intelligence piece, and then I'll move on. So I said this before, I think in a campfire session or a different interview, but basically, I see a lot of people think that emotional intelligence is controlling your emotions in a way that kind of suppresses them. Like, oh, he just took all of this that a person was kind of throwing at him, and he didn't even really respond like that. But internally, the person is going crazy, right? So I think emotional intelligence, in my opinion, is not that. I think emotional intelligence is to be able to use your emotions to feel what's going on, like around you, gain information from it, like your intuition and the feeling of anxiety when you're not feeling certain things. Like, how does that work, for you, right? I think that that is important when it comes to emotional intelligence, using your emotions to explain things that are going on outside of yourself or within yourself in a very mature way, right? And being able to kind of convey that to another person.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a really good way to think about it in terms too of separating like how people are processing it. Like, are you processing it this well because you're just ready to like burst and you're holding on to it? Or, yeah, are you, yeah,
Transmuting
I think,
it, communicating it in an
mm-hmm,
effective way that allows people to understand where you're coming from
right.
while still respecting where they're coming from too.
Yeah.
That's what I think emotional intelligence is. What is one lesson you would teach your daughter, or what is one lesson you have taught your daughter already, or will teach your daughter in the future that you want her to carry on throughout life?
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot, but one thing that does come to mind is there was a time where she said, she was talking about singing or performing or something, and she was like, I can't wait to do this when I'm older or something like that. And I said, well, baby, you don't have to wait. You could do that now.
Mm,
Um, and I've encouraged her, I've tried to encourage her to like sing on stage or, you know, perform if she wants to. And it just kind of depends. Sometimes she gets really shy or sometimes she's like all into it. Um,
mhm,
but it depends on the environment. It depends on if she feels emotionally safe. And I don't try to push her if she's not feeling emotionally safe.
mm,
It is difficult. I know I got a lot of anxiety about singing in front of people for a really long time, and just singing, right? And then going to share your songs that you wrote about your life, like that's
mm,
scary too. So I just kind of want to help her know and be aware that she doesn't have to wait to do a lot of things. If she has ideas about things that she wants to achieve or do or experience now, like I don't think for the most part she's going to be thinking about things that she's maybe not ready to do yet.
mm,
And I don't want her to approach new experiences with fear. So I guess what I really want to teach her and make sure that she continues to experience and learn is that I'm going to support her, and we're, that she doesn't have to feel like anything that doesn't like quite, I don't want her to have huge expectations either, but I don't want her to not try something that she feels called to do. So
mm.
yeah, like I don't want her to wait till she's retired to start her publishing business or whatever it is that she wants to do with her life. And I want to follow
Mm.
her. Like we all go through phases and we all have job changes, especially now, like, so she's gonna go through
Especially.
different stages and periods and things that she likes to do, and then she's gonna be like, I don't like that anymore, and I'll be like, that's okay, you don't have to. I
Mm,
think there's something to be said about like sticking to something, but I'm a person, I guess, because of my experiences, I stuck with things that I didn't want to for too long.
mm,
So I want to make sure she feels safe to like, this isn't for me anymore. And for me to know that, to respect that she knows herself enough to say, I don't want this anymore. And that's what that is. Or maybe it's not good for her now. I want to be able to trust her, and I want her to, to know that she should be able to trust herself, um, as
mm,
well as not feeling fear uh, about trying new things.
mm. Wow. I like the way you explain that. It's good advice for myself too when I do have a kid. Oh, I like it.
Thanks.
Letting the kid become their own individual. Right?
Isn't that
It's
wild? They
crazy.
kind of like have
Yeah.
that inclination already, and so I guess I have a hard time understanding where that fear comes, or where that like inclination to like shut that off is. Like why do we say no so much? Um, like I
I think
understand
it
why I
comes,
say no to having a lollipop every day, but why would I say no for her to perform if she really wants to? I don't know. That doesn't make
you know what I think? I think it comes in where people, so it's like a second childhood thing that happens to some grown-ups. Sometimes they want to live like they're young in their older years, which is cool,
sense.
keep the inner child, but there has to be a balance to that.
Mm-hmm.
But then also they want to like live out what they wanted to become through their kid, right? Like you
Yeah,
didn't make it to where you were going in
right.
life, let's say as a grown up, and you're like, well, my kid's here, I'll have them. Like, let's say music.
Yeah,
Let's say somebody was a singer and then they're like, oh no, I didn't get famous or nothing. Now you're gonna work until you're famous and make
yeah,
it, and this is what I want you to do. Forget what you want to do, right?
right.
And I think that line can get crossed because it's thin, pretty easy in certain
Yeah,
aspects because we do want the best for our kids, and so we think that we know what's best for them when they still are becoming their own individual, right? And I'm speaking
Yeah.
from a place of just outside looking in. But if I was a father, I'll have certain approaches as to how I would do it with my kids, right?
Yeah.
So,
No, I think that's a really great point. I'm really glad that you brought up that example because I do see a lot of that too. And it's like, yeah, that's okay. Like if she decides at the end of the day she doesn't want to sing or do any of that stuff, that's fine too. I have faith that whatever she's going to do is going to be right for her and that she's going to be able
mm,
to make an impact in other people's lives doing what she does best, which only she's really going to know and feel
mm. What is your perspective on love?
on love.
Yes, because you're a mother and then you also are a wife, am I correct?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay. Just want to
love
double
is
check.
love is beautiful, and so I think in terms it just kind of depends on what if you mean like love is an emotion or love is an action or love is
Oh, I mean
a
it.
choice, all of
It's
it.
the whole multitude. Yeah, everything
Yeah,
together.
yeah, it's a big question. I think i I mean, I love for me that I think the most important thing that I find is that love is just all accepting. There's no judgment in love. There's no
Mm,
um but then love can sometimes also be telling somebody when they are making mistakes. Um it's it's tough because kind of going back to the example that you gave earlier, these parents that want their kids to do things that they didn't get the chance to fulfill themselves. Sometimes, you see potential in somebody and you want to help them live that potential, but that's not always like that's just from your limited point of view. So
mm,
when it comes to love, love is so much bigger
mm,
than you or me. It is not, it doesn't have a real perspective in terms of like there's no POV video coming out about love. It's love is so much greater and higher and bigger and better than you can think.
mm,
And it is in a way it's happiness, it's completion, it's success, it's satisfaction, it's a knowing. um just the I just we're all, in my opinion, we all come from, I mean, we all come from the same source essentially. And so I find so many people focusing on differences and
mm,
distractions, and most of us just want the same thing, which is to be happy or to, have a good life with the people that we love, that are important
mhm,
to us, that we want to see win. Um, so I don't know where exactly I was going with that thought, but yeah, love is just, I think it's a beautiful mystery that we keep exploring every single day. Um,
mm,
because it's something I think that the English language, I mean, there's a language that has like 9 different words for love or something like that, and it's all different types of love, and I think that's good too.
mm,
I always love specificity. Like I'm also an English major. I think it's so important to get down to the nitty-gritty of like what you mean or what you're trying to say. And I don't mean it in a judgmental way of like, well, you said it
I
this way,
get
you
it.
could only mean it this way, but just about like exploring all the meanings, all the potential that there is.
Interesting. I wonder what you think about the way I talk. Because I get straight to the point and I draw a picture while I do it. I'm
Yeah.
aware of that. I've crafted my talking patterns to be a certain way on purpose over years.
Yeah, but you
So,
also gave me an ambiguous question, which is what is love to you? So I think also you have that potential for like, I think the way that the way I hear you speak and the way that you ask your questions, sometimes it's to get to kind of like a particular place, not to like lead somebody to that, to say that, but to like lead it through your lens, versus
mhm,
other times you want to see what lens I'm using first and then look through that.
mhm,
um yeah, because we're all coming
mm,
from our own, experiences and our own understandings of things. And that is all based off of the life experiences and your memories and your education and the people around you. All of those things influence us in our perspective to some degree. I feel like, even if you're not conscious of it. Um, yeah. So, no, I enjoy the way that you speak because I think it's important that you're so mindful about the words that you're choosing, you know?
Yeah. Hold on, let
Um,
me ask you a question. How can you tell I'm mindful? It's interesting.
well, you come up with the questions beforehand, so that gives me some,
Oh,
inclination that you're preparing in a way that is, um, you're thinking about what kind of a conversation that you want to have,
mhm.
what insights you want to gain, not what specific insights, but where you want to have these kind of like where you want to dive into these mysteries or these meanings. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, so I'd say that makes the most sense to me.
I'm gonna keep this quick on the subject of love. I think love is like water.
Ah,
Sometimes the
yeah,
tide is real heavy, sometimes it's smooth and it flows and it's real steady. Okay,
I love it.
let's keep it simple like that, because love is just so dynamic in itself. It's kind of hard to, in my opinion, fully quantify
Yeah,
what it is, especially with the different perspectives that people have on it.
I think
Moving
that's why
forward,
it's so
well,
much in art, though, because there is so many ways to interpret it or to express it.
in art.
In art, yeah, because I
Hmm,
mean, a lot of music is love songs, and not just romantic, right? But it's mostly the emotion that is being explored in a song is typically some form of love, in a way.
I agree.
Yeah.
What is the okay, I don't want to. Being a loving wife, what makes a relationship stand the test of time?
I think it's different for everybody. I think a combination of people is so important about how like people's energies mesh with another person's and how they drive another person's or steer that. And those things can change over time. So I think maintaining a connection in terms of, um, I think for relationships, the inclination is to think of like progression of time. But it's
Mm,
also like healing, and healing is non-linear. There's going to be parts of
mm,
your time in your relationship where you don't have the same communication pattern that you're going to have in 5 years, or you're not going to be focused on the same things that you're going to be in another month. It's
mm,
standing the test of time is really about like I mean, going back to your love is the ocean, like
mhm,
having a
mm.
relationship
Oh,
is
sorry.
maintaining a ship on the water. How
Mm,
do
mm,
you sail love? How do you sail with love continuously and stay afloat and stay on the boat? Like it comes
mm,
to how do you use your tools? Are you paying attention? Um, are you using your imagination? Because like what are you going to
mm,
do while you're out in the boat for the rest of your life? You got to have some sort of like you got to find ways to keep it interesting in terms of
mm,
like I think everybody has different things that satisfy them, right? So, and for me, I definitely like somebody to talk to. And my husband and I have a lot of wonderful conversations. I just love hearing his perspective, even if I don't agree with it. It's just interesting to see the progression of thought.
mm,
And so, if I was with somebody that I couldn't talk to all the time or didn't have good conversations with, then that would be something, I think when you're getting into relationships and you're looking for a partner, thinking about all the things that you are integral to you, like the things that are more subconscious than are conscious.
mm,
Um, for instance, I just love having conversations and I love to talk about all these weird things and explore new topics and watch documentaries. And I think if I was with someone who didn't want to do all of those things, it's harder to stay connected with somebody that you don't feel that mental connection with. And then you think
Mm,
about like your physical journey, like, and where do we want to live and do we want to have kids? And so thinking about what's in your subconscious that like you feel called to. And it doesn't have to be like a pro and con list of these are the reasons why I want kids or don't want kids, or um I think we focus too much maybe on uh, like the thought or the list or the, I don't know. I think those things are important too, but it's really about like how the kind of faith that you can feel when you're with a person. I think if you can be with a person that you can continue to have faith for good things and for a positive future, that's how you make it stand the test of time, because nobody can really take those beliefs away from you.
mm,
It's like I remember being confronted by a lot of people who didn't believe in God, and I just can't really accept that. I personally, I don't accept that there is no God, or that there's no spirit or source,
mm,
or
mm,
that the universe isn't somehow active in our lives, or that we're not all connected in some way. Those are just things that I feel, and I don't really need anybody else to understand them per se, but I do need to be with somebody who thinks that those are things that
mhm.
respect my decision to feel that way. Um, so yeah, I don't know if that really answers a whole lot, but I think I got there a little.
You did. You
That
got
was my
there.
perspective. Okay.
I believe in the higher power that governs the positive energy of the universe that others call God.
Yeah.
That's what I believe. I'm a rogue spiritualist. That's what I tell people. I just have a
Mm,
whole set of beliefs that are very rogue from many other people's beliefs, and it's fine, right?
yeah.
Moving forward, what is the most beautiful aspect of the human experience?
Oh, I I really do think that music is one of those things. I don't know
Mm,
that there is anything else that would come closer to
mm,
fitting that answer for me. Um, Even with music that you're like singing right but doesn't have real words, it's just a melody. There's something, it's a different language. um I think it is in some ways the language of love. I think there's a Shakespeare quote that says like, if music be the language of love, play on. I think that's the quote. But it's just a different way of feeling the world that I think is really important. And there's a reason why there's music in every culture, and that we used to tell stories through music, and keep memories through music. Um, and that you feel something when not every song, right? But I think everybody has had an experience with music where there's a song that just hit them at the right time. It created a moment or a memory, or they resonated with it. It's just, it's a lot about frequencies for me, and music is just such a very solid way of
mm.
perceiving those frequencies. Um, yeah.
I think the most beautiful aspect is captivating moments.
Mm.
The best camera I have in my life is attached to my face,
Oh,
my eyes, right? So I can
that's
see and
beautiful.
always captivate these moments. Thank you, I appreciate that. And captivate these moments through my eyes, like kids going by, a butterfly flying through the sky. These little moments. I literally do actually capture these. Like I do. I slow myself down and I take the time to enjoy this captivating moment
Mm.
because we spend so much time in the hustle and bustle, you know?
Yeah.
So just a kid staring at me because they could see my spirit, a butterfly landing on me, just little tiny things of that nature that we tend to overlook.
Mm.
I try my best to focus and hone in on, you know.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
Um, I wanted to ask a question for you that is preparing us for the upcoming event.
Okay, great.
And it says, what does it mean for you to want beautiful things for another person?
it really means that I want the best for you. Because I don't know why I wouldn't. Um,
Mm,
I don't know why I wouldn't. I want the best for me, but I also want the best for you because if you're winning, then I'm winning. If you're, you know, I've just always had relationships or been or felt this way about the people that I love. I want them to all feel good and I want them to all like I don't want them to have troubles or things like and they will and they do and they
mm,
sometimes will do it totally without me and but that doesn't change how I feel about seeing them go through hard times. And I know all of those are super necessary, but wanting beautiful things, I mean, I just want people to be happy. And so even just wanting people to be happy sometimes means the wanting them to go through the hard times, right? Because otherwise they're not going to get to that point of happiness if they're not able to fall in their face every now and again and see
mm,
what really truly makes them happy. Um, and so I just yeah, I think that's to me the biggest thing
mm,
about wanting beautiful things for other people is just wanting what I want for everybody and what I want for myself is I do want everybody to feel safe to be themselves, to live their lives without judgment, um, and to find themselves if they don't know who they are. Because I think sometimes people have a really good understanding of who they are, and sometimes people don't. And so
mm,
everybody has this individualistic journey to go on. And through that journey, I want kind of what you were saying earlier is like, I want you to find those micro joys, to see those beautiful moments, to
mm.
hold on to those things and to hoard them like treasure. And I want you to gain more and more treasure throughout your life. I want all these beautiful things for you because you deserve it, because you're inherently worth it as a human.
And last but not least, what does being human mean to you?
Oof. Oh, being human means making mistakes, means learning, means you are learning. Wow, good
Yeah, if she wants to jump
job.
on the camera, she can say hello. I
She's
don't mind that at all.
I know she loves to do her own thing. She's just grabbing a blanket, but she heard me and she was like, "I am learning." Um, yeah, I think yeah, to be human is to make mistakes and to learn from them. I think
Mm,
that's a very human thing. But I think being human is also being inherently worthy of love and of beautiful things. Um,
mm.
yeah.
I just want to say thank you for coming on and doing this interview. I really do appreciate you.
Thank you
100%.
for doing this.
Um, oh, you're very welcome. This is my first one back.
Yay! Go
It
you!
feels good,
Yeah.
right? With your help and the help of others, we're definitely going to keep it rolling. I do intend on being more consistent this year. For those who will be watching this interview all the way through, you did hear me say that here now. Toya will also be uh, assisting with structuring the I Want Beautiful Things for You campfire session. So for all of those who are tuned in right now, please be aware of that. That takes place at the end of April. We did move it um, just to better fit her time and the time that she's able to put aside for it. You're welcome. Toya, please tell everyone who doesn't know you where they can find your stuff at.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So, my name is Victoria Fragoso, and so you can find my music on streaming platforms, Victoria, if you want to say it that way, and then Fragoso, Fragoso. And then to find me on Instagram or any other social media platform, it's just Toya Makes Music. Toya is my nickname, and so that's why I do my podcast Tuesdays with Toya every Tuesday at 5 p.m. So I really appreciate you doing this. I know how much it takes to prepare for these things, to put your heart and soul into them while you're doing it. To do it live, I think that's also an incredible thing. It is, like there's so many things that people do to like pre-plan and prepare and finding people who are like willing to challenge themselves and do things like in the moment, live, spontaneous, I
Mm,
think is we all need to find ways to be more present, right? And so this is one of the ways of like requiring attention, focus, connection. Uh, so
hmm
yeah, I really appreciate this.
You're very welcome. Another reason why I do live, just to add on to what you were saying,
Mm,
piggyback with what you're saying, is because I feel like it forges a certain level of vulnerability and responsiveness, especially with the person not being able to see their questions to respond in that moment. And it just, I don't know how to explain it. It creates just this energy that people they tend to react very well in live spaces. They are nervous, but once we get to talking and I have a lot of relatable experiences, they usually then open up and it just flows very well, right?
mm-hmm.
Um, so without further ado, I ain't gonna keep you too long, but I will be contacting you in like 2 minutes
You got it.
after the interview. All right,
Sounds good.
calling you through Messenger. Thank you
Perfect.
guys for all of you who have tuned in today. We appreciate you 100%. If there's one thing that you feel like you have forgotten that you need to be reminded of, please remember everybody that we are all human. None of us are necessarily perfect, but we can still uh, move through life with love and want beautiful things for one another. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Have a great day. I will speak with you soon.
Okay.
Till next time.
Thanks, Try.
Thanks, Toya.